Greetings, dear listeners. This is Jonah Goldberg, host of the Remnant Podcast, brought to you by the Dispatch and Dispatch Media. So we're well out of the month of August, which was, we sort of fell over backwards into calling it counter-programming month. And now that we're past Labor Day, which is the traditional start of campaign season and politics, and kids are back at school, we figured we were long overdue for some truly rank punditry. And there's no one in the audience demands more when the subject is rank punditry than our own beloved Christopher Stirewalt of News Nation, the Sunday Show, The Hill, my colleague at the American Enterprise Institute.
Dispatch contributor,
of course. And a recognized but off-brand chiropodist in North Dakota. So with that, so it's no longer pressing news of any sort, but there's some stories that take up the imagination and the chattering classes for a while. And I think that one voice that I missed in this important conversation that was going on about a month ago was yours.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, what did you make of the whole Cracker Barrel palooza?
Yes, you've come the ask a fat guy from West Virginia category of questions. First, let me say, I watched you, I heard you all throughout August being high-minded, highfalutin, going about talking to Europeans and experts and whatever. And you know what? I was like a guy who owns a donut shop. And I'm watching your social media and you're like posting workout videos and you're talking about max gains and you're doing all that stuff. And I'm like, that's cool. He'll be back. When the weather changes, he'll be back in here for crullers. And here we are. So I knew you'd break eventually. The
character is destiny.
So our colleague Thomas Chatterton Williams, I think, and I talked to him about this on Sunday. The woke right is a real pain in the you-know-what, right? So the cancel culture, I think it was Chris Rufo, and I don't want to attribute it to him wrongly, but I think he's the one who has been one of the most mainstream of the advocates of cancel culture. You can't cancel us, we'll cancel you. Cracker Barrel, it is good hash brown casserole. I'm not gonna say that I have not taken comfort in a hash brown casserole from time to time. But if you need to show your power at all times, and you have Cracker Barrel, which was losing money and failing, stumbles into your web, right? So this gal who is the CEO of Cracker Barrel stumbles into your web, and it's like, who eats at Cracker Barrel? A lot of white people, a lot of old people, a lot of people in rural America. Those are our people. So we can bring maximum pressure to bear on you. And it doesn't matter what the change is. The point is that we can force you to make the change. And more than anything, it's just a demonstration of collective action power that we can organize, we can be effective, and we can make you do what we want, even if it doesn't matter.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about because I have it on good authority from Sean Davis that the CEO of Cracker Barrel hates their customers and wants to convert them all to, in his words, gay race communism.
Come on. Come on.
And that's what he said. And I love
there
the
you
phrase
have
gay
it.
race. Gay race communism is just awesome.
It sounds more fun than regular communism, right? It
really does.
It's gay race communism, where it sounds whimsical. It's whimsical communism. It's not the boring old Stalinism. It's whimsical communism.
Yeah, and I should also say, just because it popped into my head, and if I can't say it here, I never will. When you referred to the hash brown casserole, it sounds like a sexual act that your new prison cellmate demands of you.
Five minutes in, and here we are, sir. 5 minutes when the dam broke of decency for you, and here comes the fire department to put out the burning embers of your remaining dignity. Yes, here we are at you're giving somebody a hash brown casserole, and they liked it.
Yes, well, or you hope they liked it, or they're going to ask you to do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
So on the Cracker Barrel, I tend to agree with you. I think that what I did not appreciate until I started talking to like green room conversations with various people, how passionately people care about Cracker Barrel. Like, it is not, and what I find sort of fascinating about the whole enterprise is that, first of all, and I've eaten Cracker Barrel. I like Cracker Barrel. It's fine. It's not my favorite place, but the whole thing was pure capitalist marketing from the beginning. It was originally a kitschy gift shop that an oil executive put in its gas stations to sort of capture more dollars from people. It was actually a pretty sophisticated business operation. They did a lot of on time delivery for their products, for their inventory and stuff, and all that. And again, I'm not trying to detract it, but like the idea that what I kind of like about the woke right response to it is that it is quintessentially sort of anti-capitalist,
right?
Where a major corporation is losing market share, needs to update itself. You can say it was a stupid move, right? You can say it was new Coke. That's fine. Okay. But like the rush to say, no, this is actually proof of insidious left-wing wokery is it's not 100% paranoia, but it's 92%, right? I mean, they could find stuff about, LGBTQ this or Pride Month that, but that's not why they were like trying to like update the decor and update the menu for people who's, their core audience was sort of like Reader's Digest. Their core audience was just dying out and they weren't replacing them.
Right. When you have an entity based on nostalgia for a time that no longer hits because the people who were so this is 70s, I think, nostalgia for an earlier time. So these would have been for the folks who remembered going to the general store with their grandparents.
Right.
And so you have nostalgia aimed at those folks. And I think if you look at the arc of Walmart, you start out with Sam Walton and starting out with this kitschy store in Arkansas. Walmart had to figure out over time, like, okay, we have to be accessible to as many people as possible. And Walmart lost its Arkansawyer kind of brand and is now a flat, indistinguishable. You look at their logo, you look at everything about Walmart, and it's just another indistinguishable Lego piece. And if you look at the architecture of other stores, McDonald's and other places, it's the sameness of it, right? It's the flattening sameness of it. And the flattening sameness of it is an understandable market response when you have a country that people are so deeply divided, as this Cracker Barrel adventure has revealed. You don't want to offend anybody. You want to be as appealing to as many people as possible. And here was a group of people who said, we demand that you narrowcast to us, even if it bankrupts you. We will not patronize your company. And when the woke left goes after Target or whatever and I think Target's gotten it both ways, right? From the left and from the right. If you say, how about Chick-fil-A? When the woke left went after Chick-fil-A and they said, your owners support bans on gay marriage. Therefore, we are not going to patronize you to give you money in order to further your political efforts. I think it's crummy to put politics in everything. And I think it's great that Chick-fil-A won the long war there by having delicious fried chicken sandwiches. But this isn't even about the political activity of the entity. It is about a I think it's the raw exercise of power. I think it's to say, we can make you, and we'll call you, what did he call them? Gay what?
Gay race communism. This is Sean Davis.
So you can say it's about gay race communism. You can say it's about marginalizing white people. You can say it's about whatever. But ultimately, what you're saying is, I demand to be pandered to, and you better pander quick.
And it's worth pointing out that was Al Sharpton's business model for like 20 years, right? You know, show up, accuse some Wall Street firm of being racist, of redlining or greenlining or whatever, and shake them down for. And Jesse Jackson did a lot of that too. I was going
to say the Jackson family, the other Jackson family, did very, very well by the idea that you could pay off people for their for dropping specious claims against you.
All right, we don't need to dwell on this any longer. But so let me segue this way. There was a time in the before times when a pundit of your caliber had a certain set of rules of thumb.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, this is what politics is about. That's what politics is about, right? Blah, 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 blah. This is how it works. Oh, remember the time when Harry Byrd tried to do this and it was like this and blah, 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 blah. And like, oh, you know, like, historical knowledge was of considerable value in understanding and interpreting conventional things. I feel like, not to get all sci-fi, but, you know, was it in Dune, you want to get on the golden path where history will never repeat itself anymore because the universe is too large? I feel like we have stepped outside of the utility of American political history.
Well, what the hell am I going to do for work, Jonah? Thanks a lot.
Well, I mean, I'll put it this way. So yesterday, we were recording this on Tuesday morning, September 9th. Which I learned from the Morning Dispatch is the day in 1776 that the Continental Congress decided to call ourselves the United States of America.
USA.
You had the President of the United States speaking at the Bible College, or Bible Museum.
Museum of the Bible. Which is excellent, and I recommend everyone visit.
Saying, you know, I would be able to say we have 100% crime-free DC thanks to me sending troops in.
Oh yeah,
but unfortunately, they count a little. You know, this is not his words, but a little slappy face with the misses as a crime. Well, so I can't get to 100.
The actual quote should be read. I'm sure a microsecond Google search will give me what I need, but certainly there was a time when the diminishment of domestic violence would have been caused a firestorm, a political firestorm of such magnitude that we'd be talking about it for 10 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he says, oh my gosh. And he said, no, it's more than 87%. It's virtually nothing. And much lesser things that take place in the home, they call crime. You know, they'll do anything they can to find something. If a man has a little fight with his wife, they say, this was a crime, see? So now I can't claim 100%. So if we stopped counting domestic violence as crimes, we'd be at 100%. And Trump will then just, of course, claim that it's 100%, that there's, under his reign, there was no crime in DC going forward. And then people will say, well, he's trolling. And then they'll say, well, he's speaking literally. You're taking him literally, but not seriously. And then he'll later just say that it was all true.
Yeah. I mean, it does. There is an interesting consistency here, right? Because this is sort of his view of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It was his view of the COVID stuff. He was like, if you just stop collecting these numbers, we wouldn't have the numbers. And therefore, I would be able to say everything's fine. But so stop collecting the numbers. Stop recording domestic violence as crime. And then I get to say there's no crime. It's one of these great examples of how he really does think that the shadows on the walls of Plato's cave are the only reality that matters.
So the
problem.
Well, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No.
I was just gonna say the problem I have. The basis of the question is like, I find it very difficult to predict public reactions to pretty much anything anymore. My friend Seth Maskett had a good Substack about how, among other things, the data shows that presidential approval and the state of the economy are just have stopped being linked the way they were. This is sort of what I'm getting at about like the rules of punditry, of political analysis are, I'm not saying they're gone, because I still think they apply to most other politicians, but it is very difficult to say, you know, I had to do an impromptu extemporaneous 10 minutes on Donald Trump's drawing of alleged drawing of a naked woman, which I have to say, I got into some trouble up for this on CNN. I said, look, I don't know, maybe it was because of the way this thing was promoted, or it's my own prurient mind. I thought the picture would be a little more salacious.
This is 100% my reaction. I had heard it described as lewd. I had heard it described as this. So I'm thinking it's going to be bawdy, right? It's going to be raunchy and an effort to be funny, right? In a Benny Hill idea of sexuality, a lad's approach to the thing. It was not that. It was it had a sleek 90s creepiness to it that was I won't say who said it, and he'll hear it, and the only reason I'm not crediting him is I don't know if he wants to be credited for such things, but said that it looked like a poster for a 70s Swedish porno film.
Oh yeah, that's not bad. Yeah.
There's a,
and it read like it was poorly translated from the original Swedish.
From the original Swedish. And there's I hate Playboy magazine style 20th century slick sexuality, right? The idea that it's cool or sleek, or that pornography or being a satyr is somehow sleek and hip and modern and cool, and that you're sitting in your Eames chair doodling pubic hair and being cool about it. I've always hated that kind of thing because it flattens out sex, but it also takes prurience and creepiness and winks. It doesn't even wink at it. It just says, this is what sophisticated people do. And when I saw the drawing, I thought, oh my gosh, this is, they talk these days about Frasier core. Are you familiar with Frasier core?
I don't think I am.
So the interior design and fashion of the 90s as best embodied in the television show Frasier, where you have this Pottery Barn couch and the art doesn't depict anything, and there's columns detached from the ceiling, and everything is a very Clinton era kind of earth tones and whatever else. And when I saw the drawing, was like, oh, this is from that idea. This is from that period of time. And it made it so much creepier to me because it wasn't funny. It wasn't a broad, raunchy joke. It wasn't Porky's. It was Sliver.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of had a nod and a wink. Remember that time we got the hash brown casserole together? I mean, it was very strange to me. But the Cook Political Report is of no use in interpreting these things.
Okay,
is what I'm getting at.
But the Epstein scandal is the first scandal since Trump tried to steal the election, since January 6, 2021, that envisions a world without Donald Trump. Right? So if this was taking place, I think we know how this would go down if this was taking place in 2024. Right? Everybody's got to get together. Donald Trump's a bad guy. Donald Trump did bad things, but it is in all of our common interest to beat a Democrat. We got to stop Kamala Harris from being president. And so it's coming from the Biden Justice Department. We don't have to believe anything that they say. We can dismiss it out of hand. And Trump, and as a matter of fact, it worked for him before. When Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, or whatever one believes occurred, under the watch of the Trump Bureau of Prisons, when Donald Trump appointed the prosecutor who gave Epstein the original sweetheart deal into his cabinet. When these other things happened, there was another election to be won. Okay, we gotta look. Okay, we've made our deal with the devil, and now we got to give the devil his due. That's not what's happening here. And I thought the same thing when I saw Rand Paul going to town on JD Vance about JD Vance strutting around saying it's cool if we just kill people on the open seas if we say that they're drug runners. And Rand Paul, who took the Obama administration to the mat over drone killings, said the United States cannot go around killing people without a declaration of war, without some finding. We can't just say to the Navy, hey, if you see people that you think are running drugs, you should kill them. You shouldn't pull them over. You shouldn't stop the boat. You should kill them because it's cooler if you kill them. That will be bad for the United States. So what I witness now is that at the margins of the Republican Party, libertarians, starting as always, starting with the libertarians, that Thomas Massey on the Epstein stuff and other Republicans are envisioning a world where Donald Trump doesn't need to be reelected, where Donald Trump, he may still have power in the Republican Party, but they'll be answerable in a different way. And the last thing I'll say about it is, this is all in my mind because I wrote about it for today. If you have a scandal, the reason that Iran-Contra was such a big deal for the Reagan administration and for George H.W. Bush, it went to a central strength and a core principle of that administration. Ronald Reagan launched his presidency with the release of the Iranian hostages. Going after Carter for the hostages still being held in Iran was a big deal. That they were doing a deal with Iran undercut a core thing. Sex trafficking, grooming, pedophilia, the protection of children, all of that stuff is central to. So if Donald Trump wasn't president and the Bill Clinton birthday note came out, right? Bill Clinton,
right.
The old Bill Clinton birthday note came out. I mean, there would be no end. There would be no end to the amount of coverage that right-wing media was giving the story, because their voters really, and I, in a sincere way, I don't think that Republicans or MAGA people are pretending that they care about child sex trafficking. I don't think they liked the movie, what is it, Cry Freedom? You remember that? Jim Caviezel made a movie and it became a cause celeb.
Oh yeah.
I think it was something freedom. I'm sorry, Jim Caviezel. But I don't think the people who went to that movie and championed it and the people who talked about Bill Clinton being a groomer, I don't even think when Donald Trump, I think when MAGA people attacked Ron DeSantis and called him a groomer in 2016 or in 2024, I don't think they were kidding. I think they believe it and they mean it. So when Trump then says, hey, look, come on, it was a different time when we, sent weirdo poems to each other. Said weirdo poems to each other, and some of our friends had sex islands. It was a different time. Don't worry about it.
Since you brought up DeSantis, we'll switch gears. I kind of feel, again, I've already stipulated that I my political judgment based on Earth logic of circa 2000 to 2015 feels inadequate to the wacky Japanese game show life that we live in these days. But I kind of feel, and again, maybe I'm wish casting and relying on my prior. I kind of feel like the smart play for Ron DeSantis, who I think still wants to be president.
Oh yeah.
Is to lean heavily, maybe not go full Jeb Bush, but like to lean heavily into the stuff he's actually good at, which is like competently running a state,
painting over the memorials of mass shootings in Orlando.
Maybe not that.
Okay.
But
okay.
Right. But like he has done wonders to establish Florida as like this haven where sort of normie Republicans can move and live in a kind of sort of, hey, let's go to the Cracker Barrel kind of life, like upper middle class, normie, suburban kind of thing with better weather and all that. what is he gaining? Put me in his head and tell me why eliminating all vaccine mandates is a politically smart move for Ron DeSantis.
I'm not saying that Ron DeSantis is George Wallace, but I am saying that the lesson.
Although
that,
he might like to make his wife a stand-in governor.
I'm just saying the Wallace comparison is always dangerous because of Wallace's enthusiastic the late revanche segregationism of George Wallace makes it challenging. But yes, he is trying to get his wife, seems to be trying to get his wife to be his successor.
For listeners who don't know, that's what Wallace did. He made Lurleen. That's her name, right?
That's right.
Lurleen, governor of Alabama,
well, he didn't,
and then ruled from behind the scenes.
He didn't make her.
Got her elected.
They loved him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And much like Huey Long in Louisiana, and Huey Long, of course, is my preferred template for Donald Trump. How to understand Donald Trump. Huey Long explains more than almost anybody else. But what happened to George Wallace was that he lost an election for governor because he was accused of being soft on the race question. Because when he had been a judge, he had been decent and obliging. Racist, but decent and obliging to black lawyers and black litigants, and had a good reputation among the black members of the bar. And his opponent used that against him, and it is reported that he said that he would never get out N-worded again. And so he decided, okay, is this what we're doing here? Great. This is what gets him riled up. I'll do that. And it was also just as clear that George Wallace, who went from standing in the door at the University of Alabama to segregation now, segregation forever, when he went north to run for president, he dropped this. Okay, never mind about the segregation. And I think for DeSantis, and I watched that back and forth. So the Pulse nightclub shooting, one of the worst mass shootings undertaken by, I believe, an Islamist lunatic targeting a gay nightclub in Orlando. And Florida is a lot of things, but it has Florida has big gay energy. And so this slaughter was the response to the slaughter was unifying. Gay America, the anti-Sharia, like it got everybody. So they had a crosswalk that was painted in the rainbow flag. And they paved it over. DeSantis sent out the edict. We have no, we're not. There's no more. Everything is just going to be by the numbers, which would be a fine policy, right? We don't do street art. Okay, that would be a fine policy. And then the folks in Orlando went out and repainted the crosswalk in a sign of the community saying, no, this matters to us. And you know what they did? They sent the trucks back out. And they painted over it again. They paved over it again. And I thought, well, that's insane because the gays are well organized. They get mad. They stay mad. I look at that and I look at the way that DeSantis is struggling with the election to be his successor. His political stock in Florida is garbage, right? He went from being one of the most popular governors. He lost all that. His own party has rejected him. His own legislature has repudiated him, and I think
based on what? Like what are their key gripes?
He ran against Trump.
Okay, yeah.
The thing for Ron DeSantis is Trump told him what to do. Everybody told him what to do. Wait your turn. And DeSantis said, "I'm not waiting my turn. I'm going to go out there. Fortune favors the bold. I'm doing this." And now it's sort of like what happened to Ted Cruz after the 2016 convention. It doesn't matter what you think. It matters that you disrespected the establishment, and you will be punished in parties when you disrespect a popular establishment. And I want to say one thing though about your nothing matters and how do we keep track of everything. I said to you in October of last year, well, there's three scenarios. Either the polls are right and it's a very, very close election, More likely the polls are wrong, but we don't know which direction or how much. And either they're right the same way they were in 2020, and Donald Trump's going to overperform, and then he'll win the popular vote, or Kamala Harris is going to overperform the way Barack Obama did in 2012, and she's going to win a pretty clear and decisive victory. I said that because the polls were very close, but also because I didn't read it correctly. I think I've talked to you about this. Bill McInturf, who is, I would say, the most esteemed Republican pollster at Public Opinion Strategies, the ne plus ultra of GOP polling. And McInturf, I did a panel at AEI, an election watch panel with our colleague John Fortier, and talked to him and a Democratic counterpart. And he said it right in the middle of the vibe moment for Kamala Harris. And he's like, this is a fundamentals election. People don't like the way the economy's going. And the party in power is way underwater. And the party in power will lose. And I thought, yeah, but Trump is different. But it wasn't, right? Mm-hmm. It was, if you would have just looked at the data in front of you and said, will the party that's in power retain the White House, given the data in front of me? If you had taken the names off, I would have said, no way. Incumbent president, badly underwater, people with the wrong track numbers are in the garbage. Everything, all the dashboard indicators are wrong for the party in power. And I would have said no. And then you put the names on, you go, well, Trump does excite the Democratic base. And nobody excites the Democratic base like Trump. That's probably why the Republicans are going to get a whooping next year, is nobody gets the Democrats to turn out like Donald Trump. And it's a long way of saying the fundamentals were clear in 2024, but they were hard to see because of Trump. I think it's impossible to take the instance of winking at or shrugging at domestic violence. Donald Trump creates 75 controversies a day. You cannot possibly keep up with them. He is a churning typhoon of BS out in the ocean, just lashing the shore all the time with hash brown casserole, just a constant assault. And I frequently am like, but this should be, people are really going to take notice of this. And they don't, because the next thing just comes along. And the other thing, which is people don't listen to him in that way. People are like, whatever, Donald Trump is always saying something. So I'm not going to worry too much about what he's saying.
I want to get back to the fundamental stuff in a second, but you brought up the phrase big gay energy and how they once mad, they stay mad. And I have to say that if there is a person in public life who has done more to combat some of the grosser stereotypes about gay people, it is our Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent.
Tell you what.
Is, and I don't mean this, I'm not trying to do a homophobic thing here. Like, I actually think I legitimately think it's kind of good that, I mean, I have my disagreements with Bessent, but like, he's going around threatening to be a sprinkler system of fists to anybody who gets in his way. You know, he allegedly punched or threatened to punch the richest man in the world, you know, back in April, Elon Musk. And then, look, I'm not even a Iran-Iraq war on this. Like, I would very much like to see Scott Bessent beat the stuffing out of Bill Pulte. In fact, I'm kind of hoping that this is all prelude. This is part of the big sort of long tease for the ultimate fighting stuff at the White House, where they're going to put Bessent and Pulte in there.
Well, first of all, I hope your mortgage records are in order, Jonah, because these criticisms will no doubt draw investigation.
I have my take. I had to have a take because I was doing it on CNN. But do you have a larger takeaway from the significance of the sort of internal fight club at the White House?
And this conflict with Pulte, who is the son of a mega donor who has been given this position, which has traditionally been a sinecure or for some not an important job. not seen.
It's a hugely important job if you worked your way up the bureaucracy.
Right. Yeah.
As a really qualified, bookish kind of number cruncher person. It's like, oh, you got to run the Federal Housing Authority, whatever the thing is. It is not like it's not the ambassador to France, which of course they gave to Jared Kushner's dad after pardoning him for his scuzziness. But that's a different issue. So,
so you have Pulte, who is looking every way that he can to be Donald Trump's man, right? He's gonna bring these actions against Democrats, selective enforcement of people who are claiming homestead exemptions on their on multiple mortgages, and he's going to do that. So, Besant, you say Besant, is that right?
I don't know. I people have corrected me. I keep forgetting. So, however you want to say it is how you should say it. Don't follow my lead.
I say Besant because it sounds more normal. But
okay, Besant. I will try to correct.
I might be wrong. So, Besant's conflict with Pulte is the same as his conflict with Elon Musk, which is they were undermining him in Besant's mind. And when Besant went to this gathering at Donald Trump Jr.'s clubhouse in Georgetown, he confronts Pulte and says he's gonna kick his ass and wouldn't back down. And it occurs to me, what is Scott Bessent getting out of being Treasury Secretary? His is a remarkable story. He is a self-made man. He is by far the highest ranking openly gay cabinet member. He is a married gay man with kids. He is not a New York finance bro. He lives in South Carolina. He's made this, and he worked for George Soros. He's done it all, right? Mm-hmm. Scott Bessent has this really interesting thing, and you can see when he's talking about the administration's policies, he is looking for a way to say insane things in a sane way, right? Mm-hmm. He walks up softly to the hash brown casserole and says, well, where the good things are going to happen later. And then he puts on the Pepsodent smile, slaps it on there, and he's not going to answer any more questions. And he's going to grip and grin his way through it. And that's it. And I keep thinking, what's in it for you? Right. So I'm open to the possibility that he believes that this is public service and that he's making it better and that this is good and that this is important. But having this succession of ambitious, morally flexible, ethically flexible individuals targeting you again and again and again, how do you stay? I think about this pretty frequently. How long, we read the story about Pete Hegseth exploring potentially running for office in Tennessee next year. How long can you stay in the hurricane? How long, or the typhoon? How long can you stay in that space and do it? And I look at Bess and I'm thinking, you're rich. You're super rich, brother. What are you doing? What are you doing having to threaten to get in fistfights with people at Donald Trump Jr.'s club in Georgetown? There's a better life. When are you going to avail yourself of it?
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, the production schedule of the G-File and this podcast would be remarkably altered if I had Bessent's money.
Yeah. My number's much lower. My number is, and that's why the good Lord has never seen it fit to make me rich, is that my number's super low. And I'd be like, all right, peace.
So my take on it is that he's a good inside player. Mm-hmm. And clearly he was a good inside player to get the appointment because there are a lot of people who want to be Treasury Secretary. But moreover, this is the kind of thing you're going to get when you have a president who is so susceptible to worm tongues saying bad things about you in a conversation, right? I mean, right. Laura Loomer literally gets all sorts of people fired just by making accusations that they are insufficiently loyal or they said something mean about you.
Or they're Jewish or something.
Or they're And Trump is persuadable by the last person he listens to. If you tell him someone was talking smack about you, he believes it until proven otherwise. And Besant knows this. And so like when Pulte is talking smack about him behind closed doors, like he's like, the only way to send the signal that no one can do this about you is to pick these kinds of fights, or at least that's how he sees it.
And
it's a
Trump,
very mean girls administration in that way, right? It's like you got to.
And Trump must appreciate the threats of violence and the chest bumping and all of that stuff. That's the kind of machismo stuff. And I think to your initial point, because Besant is a gay man, I'm sure he feels extra pressure in Trump world to not fit any of the stereotypes, right? I'm sure he feels extra pressure not to be written off as some sort of feminized person. Yeah. And I'm sure that's extra. I'm sure that's extra pressure for him. I think generally, though, it is true that Trump is subject to flattery in an extraordinary way and can be turned by the last person he talked to, but also he's a leverage person, right? Everything is about getting leverage on other people. The way to best explain the whole Epstein thing, for example, to me, is not that something is going to come out that Donald Trump was a pedophile, but that why would you give up the leverage on other people that you would get from having access to that information, right? If it all came out, then how could you possibly exert leverage on other people? Once, if we think about the National Enquirer stuff with Trump, once the story's out, there's no leverage. But as long as you know something that somebody else doesn't, then you have leverage over it.
It's interesting. I hadn't thought of that explanation for the Epstein file stuff. I just assume, I've been put in this weird position of having to defend Trump, which insofar as it is now becoming pretty common on social media for people to say, well, it's obvious that he raped kids and was a pedophile and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, there's good evidence that he sexually assaulted people. Yeah. But there's no evidence that I've seen other than really tangential sort of insinuation and circumstantial stuff that he was involved in the kind of stuff that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were. And part of my reason for thinking that he didn't do that stuff is that if there was evidence for it,
that's not one the Biden administration would have said, well, this would be too hard for the country to see.
Yeah. And it's like the idea that the insiders in the deep state and all of that, and the people who hate him in the weaponized Justice Department say, yeah, we got this film of Trump with underage girls, but let's let Alvin Bragg do his 36 business record falsifications instead, right?
Let him work, let him cook.
Yeah, and the idea that like the New York Times could get Donald Trump's tax returns, and get all of these other things on Trump, but the literally hundreds of people who would have to have seen this evidence to say, well, I can't give you this.
I can't give you this.
This is just
it
just makes no sense to me, right?
No,
so I've always assumed that there's embarrassing stuff in there, like his stupid doodle with the signature Merkin. But
thank you. The mirthful Merkin will definitely be the name of the tavern I open in Palm Beach.
Would you call it a lithographic Merkin, a signatory Merkin? I don't know. Well, anyway, people are right now furiously Googling Merkin, which was not going to end up on the bingo card, right? This is what the
all this pent-up demand for rankness has just the river's overflowing its banks.
That's right. But the Merkin talk is a hapax leogmon, which is a word that only appears once in all of human history, and on this podcast.
There you go.
All right. So
on all of that, Democrats have finally learned one of the core political communication lessons of MAGA. Doesn't matter if it's true. It matters if you can Cracker Barrel them, right? Can you generate? And Gavin Newsom will lead them from that wilderness into a new wilderness, which is just do it, just say it. So on the Epstein, Donald Trump is a pedophile. MAGA people accused people of being pedophiles for years. It was just like, yeah, just say it. And we'll just say it until you have to answer it. I think often about Trump's successful effort to force Barack Obama to show his birth certificate, right? And it started out, I don't have to show anybody my birth certificate because I'm an American. I'm born in Hawaii. And Trump, he found Joe Arpaio out in Arizona, and he found a willing audience. And he also found a bunch of Republicans who just wouldn't say that this is racist, xenophobic, crazy,
right,
terrible. They're like, what did Hillary Clinton say about Obama said, Obama says he's a Christian, and she said, like, I'll take, well, that's what he says. She, in a very dismissive way, wouldn't say the right thing, wouldn't say the thing that John McCain said famously in that town hall. And Donald Trump's first real political success was he made Barack Obama show his long form, or I don't know where the birth certificate game is. And do you remember what Trump said as soon as Obama showed his birth certificate? Now show me your transcripts.
Yeah.
Okay. Now show me your transcripts. The left approach now, they have discovered, if you say it, I don't know if the guy who said that it was gay race communism was sincere or not sincere, but it doesn't matter because you just say it. And if you get nailed for saying something bad, you say, I was kidding. And if people believe it, then that's great too. So I think what we've watched is, in the mirroring of our political system, Democrats are now saying, just say it, just accuse people of anything, just throw it out there, threaten to sue them, just be worse, right? And I think the dangerous thing for the Republic is that it's effective, and that Democrats are learning how to do this. And Gavin Newsom is having success, that we can end up in a place where cynical, dishonest, ironic I wrote the other day that I yearn for a time when people pretended to be good. I yearn for a time. You in one of your high-minded, you warmed my heart in your high-minded August, when you corrected a guest to point out that it was Rochefoucauld who said that hypocrisy is the tribute that vice pays to virtue. And it was previously considered a political benefit to be a hypocrite. You had to pretend like you were a good person and you were doing it for the right reasons and that you were high-minded. What Democrats have now learned is just call them a kid toucher. Just go for it. Who cares?
Yeah.
And the percentage of people that believe it's true, who are cynical about it, it doesn't matter, because the goal is just to get Cracker Barrel to put the old guy back on the logo. Just keep going until they respond.
Yeah, it's funny. I was on, I did Bill Maher a couple months ago for reasons mostly having to do with Original Sin. And
you were good.
At one point, I made some sort of comment about how, Republicans used to talk about the free market and limited government and all that kind of stuff. And Morris said, yeah, but they never believed that. and my response was, yeah, but at least they lied about it.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean that. Like, I quote that Wayne Booth literary critic guy all the time about how rhetoric is the art of probing what men believe men ought to believe. Yes. And if you say you have high ideals, you might actually eventually internalize them and not want to be hypocritical, and actually live up to them rather than. Yes. And we're in a moment now where, I often say to people when they tell me how disappointed they are in me, I tell them, I'm sorry I failed to live down to your ideals. It's a weird moment, right? Okay, but back to the pundit. There's right. So much more punditry. We don't have a lot of time left here.
Hit me.
All right, so I am kind of fascinated by what Hispanics are going to do in 2026, and
Okay.
I'll tell you why.
Tell me.
Right? First of all, I think the numbers of self-deportations are greater and different than a lot of you cephalogists might suspect,
Okay.
because they're very hard to track, right? We know the DHS says there's like 1.6 million that have done it through the CPB app or whatever, but
A lot more than that
we
just
don't,
left. Yeah.
but we don't know who just left, right? And um and I was talking to a political consultant about this, and he was saying, well, look, he was like, I don't know this, and we're guessing here because we don't have good numbers right now, but if you are a Trump voting Hispanic in 2024, you are likely to be more religious, more
Yes.
rule following,
Yes. Male.
more family oriented, right?
Sure.
And slightly maybe more upscale and economically. And so if you've got people in your family who you're afraid are going to get detained or deported, you might just, and if you feel like this is all beneath your dignity, and you want to keep your family together, and you also want to obey the rules, and you're told, okay, now you have to leave, or someone in your family has to leave, you might all just leave, right? And disproportionately so. I'm not saying it's huge numbers, right?
Okay.
So that's one thing. The other is, I talked to a Democratic political consultant who specializes in Hispanic stuff, and he was saying he doesn't know about that. He says it sounds plausible, but who knows? But anecdotally, in his experience, it's the very upscale, upper middle class, professional Hispanics that he knows who are just saying, hey, look, I can do this by Zoom. It's like COVID. I don't have to be here and put up with this crap. I can move to Mexico. I can move to Spain. I already speak Spanish, right? I can be done by 1 o'clock in the afternoon doing this from Madrid. So I'm out of here. Now, that's not a huge demographic, super high end. But and then you look at the fact that most of those Hispanics who converted, like when you listen to a lot of MAGA people, they believe that the Hispanics who voted for Trump
became Republicans,
fully Republican people, right? And that they've been baptized into MAGA, and they cannot. And I think some of them because they know disproportionately Floridian Hispanics who are much more bought into like anti-Venezuela, anti-Castro stuff, and are more MAGA. But the Hispanics in southern Texas that we're going to get these new districts out of, they voted on economic stuff.
Yes.
And inflation. And they're now hearing all of this stuff. They're seeing all of this stuff. The beer sales for Latino, Modelo and Corona have plummeted because people aren't throwing parties anymore and tailgating because they're afraid they can't have large gatherings because they're afraid it'll attract ICE. You put all that together, and the fact that inflation has not really gone away for those kinds of voters, the economy is not doing what they want, and a lot of people are losing their jobs, and all that. They were only ever a jump ball. They were not full-fledged, Republican voters. And in an off-year election, in midterms, you don't get a lot of Hispanic voters anyway because they're low-propensity voters. Again, we're speaking in the aggregate here.
Right.
I feel like we could be setting up for a really shocking sort of come to Jesus or come to Jesus thing for the GOP when it comes to Hispanics. So tell me where I'm wrong or insensitive or whatever.
If the mistake that Democrats made for the past 20 years, the principal mistake with Hispanic voters that Democrats made in the past 20 years was believing that that Hispanic voters were monolithic. The Democratic understanding of racial politics, ethnic politics, was set hard by Lyndon Johnson and civil rights. You have a group that is mostly Republican that becomes in the course of not just one generation, but in the course of a decade becomes 90% Democratic in black voters. You get this extraordinary switch in black voters, though it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. It's going up and down a few points. Black Americans remain overwhelmingly Democratic. Democrats believe that the template for, and because of a poor reading of our colleague Rui Teixeira's book on the emerging Democratic majority and a lot of wishful thinking, believe that this was true of Hispanic voters too. While, as you pointed out in your question, Hispanic voters are much more like the Southern and Eastern European immigrants who came to the United States 100 years ago than the descendants of slaves, right? And that ethnicity becomes less salient over time. And there's a lot of good work that talks about the fungibility of the definition of whiteness and what happens when you have multiple generations of multi-ethnic marriage and all of that stuff. And it is important if you live in Texas that if you are Hispanic, if you are a descendant of Mexican people, in the same way that if you live on Staten Island, your being Italian is important to you, but it's not the most important thing, right? It's not. That's not a truly definitional. Certainly not in the way that being black in the South in the 1960s and 1970s would have been. Democrats believe that, and I'm speaking in broad generalities here, but there was a too much generality in Democratic thinking about what Hispanic voters were like, number one. And number two, what issue do they care about? And that immigration was so far ahead, so much more important than everything else. Republicans say, oh, they were trying to bring in their new voters. They're trying to replace that. I'm sure that somebody thought that, but I think mostly they thought, well, what do Hispanic people want? They want liberality and immigration from their native or ancestral countries. That's what they want. They want their relatives to come. They want people like them to come, and they care about this issue. And we can demonize Republicans who are doing things like they did in Arizona when they had the Show Me Your Papers law and other states that tried to replicate it, and Democrats thought they had it figured out. Then they took those voters for granted while the demographic change was churning underneath, continuing to affect who the Hispanic voters here were. Some are climbing the socioeconomic ladder. They're getting older. Other generations are being born. And Democrats were stunned in 2024 when Hispanic voters said, yeah, Donald Trump, probably a bad guy. I don't know, but you people are a joke. You're a disaster, right? Joe Biden, the prices, the trans, give me a break with you people. So they get this response. Now, Republicans say, not only are we going to treat Hispanic voters the same way and say, this is what Hispanic voters are like. Well, which Hispanic voters? Arizona, California, Colorado, North Carolina, Florida. Like, we got a lot.
They're Mexican Americans in Texas who've been there way longer than the Germans and Czechs who've been there for 150 years.
Yes, exactly. Which kind of Hispanic voters in which place of which gender of what socioeconomic status? So the first is the flattening. This is what Hispanic people are like, number one. And then number two, Republicans said there was a Supreme Court decision that says that in Los Angeles, ICE can continue to racially profile. If you want to make Hispanic Americans act monolithically, a great way to do that is to say, and we are now racially profiling Hispanic people. The insult to a person who was born in this country to be hassled by some guy wearing a mask on the street and given a hard time if he was born here. Can you imagine the shame, indignity, outrage, anger that would flow from somebody saying, well, you're doing a job, you sound like and look like one of the people that we can detain, so we're going to hassle you. We're going to give you a hard time. The backlash of this, I'm not saying that it's sufficient for Democrats to have some kind, like, to put it to brass tacks. In Texas, I don't think that the Republicans have gerrymandered themselves out of any seats. It's not what you call a dummy mander. They haven't, oops, we've accidentally done it. But everybody keeps talking about these 5 seats. The model for 5 seats is predicated on Republicans doing exactly as well with Hispanic voters in 2026 as they did in 2024. That wouldn't have happened under any circumstance, but I definitely don't think it's going to happen with masked ICE agents hassling people in the streets. And I mean, it's just the political stupidity of it all, and the back and forth, the ping pong game of politically stupid pandering is offensive to me.
So I should say, from what I understand of the court decision, this is this emergency docket thing that happened yesterday. I think I probably agree with the court on the legality, but on the morality and the political savviness of it, I'm pretty appalled by it.
Yeah,
And
just be cool. How about trying to be cool?
And so what I keep thinking about is a couple of years ago, David French was back before he, betrayed us and went to that rag in New York.
The failing New York Times.
He was talking about how having a adopted black daughter really opened his eyes about race stuff in America, because people would say nasty things to, his wife and about it, their daughter, and and he had a really interesting way of explaining it. He says, okay, imagine that out of every 20 interactions you have with a human being, only one of them is identifiably bigoted. So on the one hand, most of your interactions with white people are not bigoted. There's only 5%, right? Or something like that. But the way your mind works is that 5% looms very, very large. And if 1 in every 100 times I went to a Starbucks, I encountered anti-Semitism, I would not say, well, odds are the next 99 times everything will be fine. It gets very large in your head. And you only have to stop an Hispanic American who's been here for, whether he's born here or whether
been here for 400 years. How about his mother? How about his mother? Yeah. How about his illegal immigrant mother, who came here illegally 30 years ago and has been working her fingers to the bone and doing all of that, and she gets hassled and she gets deported? What if your in-laws get deported? What if all of that stuff? And I feel like in the Trump administration, there is Donald Trump extraordinarily focused on midterms, and then there is Stephen Miller extraordinarily focused on the idea that they have to do everything now because they're going to lose midterms.
Right.
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 So on the one hand, you have Donald Trump, who is obsessed, very clearly obsessed, because he doesn't want to get impeached a third time. He doesn't want Democrats to be in control. Very understandable. And so things like forcing Texas to gerrymander, and we can talk next time about the implications in other states and what the math ends up looking like. But Trump thinks about midterms a lot, right? Like a lot. And then I look over on the policy side, Stephen Miller, Russ Vought, and others, and they're governing like they think they'll never have power again.
Yeah.
And we have to do everything now. We have to do it louder. We have to do it in the most vigorous way possible. Now, there's an argument that would say we have to take our medicine now, and then the benefits will redound to us, and that by 2028, people will say it worked, and we got to bring and accelerate the pain. And that's not an insane argument if it works, but with tariffs, you cannot. I will shut up just by saying, back to Besant, you cannot tell people we are going to increase taxes, import taxes, by hundreds of billions of dollars. We are going to deport or cause to self-deport hundreds of thousands of workers out of the U.S. economy, and everything's going to be great. You can't say that. You can't say that any more than Joe Biden could say.
Well, you can say it. It's just not persuasive.
Well, right. Well, you can't say it any more than Joe Biden could say your 4th of July picnic cost 38 cents less than it did a year ago or whatever. If you keep telling people not to believe what they're feeling and what they're experiencing in their lives, they will make you pay. They will make you pay politically. And I think if Republicans had found a way, when Trump said, maybe you won't have $20, you'll have $2, and people are like, oh my gosh, blah, 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 blah. I got to say, probably a better approach than saying the numbers are fake. Probably a better approach than saying welcome to the golden age. I think a one-term president who had the courage of his convictions. I don't see any evidence in history that says the tariffs work. But I think a one-term president who said, this is what we believe, this is what we're going to do, and it's going to hurt, but it's going to be worth it. I'm not running again, and this is what we're going to do, would be more persuasive than somebody who said, What are you talking about? Everything, and energy prices are not high. Food prices are not high. Job losses are not stacking up, and telling people not to believe what they're experiencing in their own lives.
Yeah. So this gets to, I mean, on the Besant thing, just very quickly, his best argument, which he gave to Laura Trump, and kudos to him for being willing to subject himself to such a grilling.
That's right.
Is when asked about the claims that these are taxes on American consumers, he said, well, if that's the case, then why are all these countries complaining about these tariffs, right? If clearly, like, if they're not paying them, why would they complain? And it's just so preposterously stupid, right? If like Trump came out of the executive order that said subscribing to small independent media outlets like the Dispatch, we're going to have 100% tax on every subscription, we would complain a great deal, even though we're not being charged anything.
Exactly.
Right. But on the broader thing, we can just sort of close with this. So you were talking about, in the lead up to the election, I talked a great deal about how I thought some of my friends who were making peace with voting for Trump made the error of thinking that the most likely scenario was also the best case scenario.
Yes. Don't we all?
That it would be a replay of the first term. And I was right and they were wrong in saying that the second term will not be like the first term. Where I was wrong was, I remember I gave a speech in October telling people to calm down, big important speech I give every year, and saying, look, Trump is not going to be able to, for logistical managerial reasons, to do the kind of mass deportations where you're dragging people off their job sites and asking people to show their papers and sending hundreds of thousands of people home, little old ladies dragged into vans and all that kind of stuff. I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I was wrong. I mean, it may not yet be the nightmare scenarios that I was conjuring to say those scenarios are unlikely, but they're closer to the reality than I would have thought. And, you go down the list, there are an enormous number of things. The toughest president we've had on Vladimir Putin in 20 years was Trump 1. And it's now very clear that the reason for that is that he was constrained by Mike Pompeo and a bunch of other people.
And re-election
into doing things that he didn't want to do, that he didn't believe in doing. And the Trump uncaged guy, who's also just sort of, I think, deteriorating with age and all these other things, and surrounded entirely by yes people, when, on the principle of, world's tallest midget, when Scott Bessent is the most mature, reasonable, steady hand in your administration, and he's threatening to punch people in the face.
Yes, that's the show of his of his maturation, is that he's going to whoop you in the president's son's boys club.
Yeah, in this very creepy eyes wide shut kind of club in Georgetown. But this sort of gets to my point, is that we don't have a lot of historical analogies about politics in a moment like this. Declaring, now you're going to learn why we changed its name to the Department of War, about an American city. If you'd said something like that would happen in the abstract 10 years ago, I would say, well, that's, people would be, checking the president's medications, because he wouldn't do anything like that. And like, now people are appalled, but they're not particularly shocked by it. And I don't know. I just don't know how to measure,
in Amusing Ourselves to Death, Neil Postman wrote that it is not necessary to lie to a people who have been narcoleptized. And we have been amused quite nearly to death by our public life. And the consequences of cable television, and then the birth of the internet, which undercut some of the negative consequences, but then turbocharged them soon thereafter. and it's just a waterfall, right? It just is nothing. The nihilism of LOL, nothing matters, and saying, I don't know, everything's just crazy, and who knows, and things stop having meaning, and we can blame the mainstream media, which I consider myself to be a part of, for our failings, and they are many, right? They are many over time. But I think where the blame most correctly lies, almost always, is that we are getting what we demanded. We are getting what we wanted, which is to be entertained, to be amused, to be unthinking. And we're getting it. And we're getting it in spades. And now Democrats are imitating pretty effectively when you can make Donald Trump say that he's not actually dead, right? You're doing it. If you can make the sitting president come out and say, I'm not dead, just by trolling him online, you know, you're figuring out how to do something. As far as the political consequences, I guess if what we would expect to happen in November of next year is that the out party would gain a substantial relative to the size of the majority number of seats in the House, and then the Senate depends a lot on a lot of other variables.
But specific races kind of thing.
Yeah, it's candidate quality matters a lot more in the Senate and all of that stuff. But so let's say Democrats get what they want, and all of the bad things that Republicans have done, have allowed, have countenanced, have taking ownership shares of companies, if the totality of it all ends up in a real gully washer for the party in power, and the Republicans do lose the Senate, and they, instead of Democrats having a 4-seat majority in the House, they have a 20-seat majority in the House. It's a huge tsunami. Let's say that happens. What lesson will Democrats take from that? Will they say, now we must be sober-sided? Now let us summon Yuval Levin and have him tell us how we can rebuild these institutions. Or will they say, well, the answer is to be the most flattering and easiest lie that partisans tell themselves is that they lost elections because they were too good. We were too good. They fight dirty, and we don't. So we've got to learn to fight dirty like they do. And it is a permission structure that leads us right to the gutter, and that's where we are now.
Gold.
Bye, gold.
All right.
See you in the fallout shelters.
Christopher Stirewalt, always a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
My friend, I'm glad to be back.
Obviously, we will have you back.